Welcome back to SwitchCorner. Today we're going to be taking a look at Orangeblood on the Nintendo Switch. This one, it's an RPG that's rocking a mature rating, but does it use this to its advantage in its storytelling? And then can it stand up there with the greats? Well, hit subscribe if you love the Switch as much as we all do here, join our growing family, and let's get started. So story-wise, there's honestly not a huge amount to it. The game opens on our lead hero and she has been captured by the CIA. In return for her freedom, she agrees to essentially get to the bottom of gangs that are inhabiting the island of New Koza. This all results in kind of a ton of minor missions that often I really struggled to find the connection between, other than here's someone, go kill them, or here's a location, going investigate something. It's not that it's necessarily bad as ideas go, it's just not for those of you out there looking for the more traditional epic storyline you normally find within the genre. What is poor though, the writing and its execution. The M rating amounts to nothing more than constant swearing, which is fine, but it's written by someone who has clearly never swore in their entire life, and they've just gone absolutely overboard with it. Swearing, if used right, can add impact to the dialogue, but here it's just overkill. It's like an episode of South Park, and that clearly wasn't what they were going for. They were going for that hard-edged, almost gangster vibe, and it just kind of comes off as laughable, honestly. In the end, you'll be reading some of these lines and you won't be able to help but smile. Throw into this then some grammatical issues, and yeah, I found two things. It took me a long time to warm up to the characters, and I couldn't help but smile at something that should have been serious. That said, it's weird. It's one of those so bad it's good scenarios, and I will say by the end I did find myself warming up to the characters, and I did manage to find a bit of charm underneath it all. I ended up kind of feeling like this was, the B-movie of RPGs. Think if The Room, the movie, went gang war tales. The best thing about the story though, the setting, the world is impressive, as it's set in an alternate 90s where flying cars exist, hip-hop is all the rage, and that absolutely sounds good to me. Gameplay then, and we get a relatively traditional RPG. Get a mission, head to the marker on the map and complete said task, which as I say is 90% kill someone. The turn-based combat is fine. You'll basically have attacks with different weapons, skills, so everything like health boosts to power-ups, and then the ability to reload. This is because in this world we are tracking 3 meters, health of course, specials which build up gradually, and then attack points. Attack points here is impacted by the amount of bullets the gun is carrying. So when this is getting low, let's say you see 1 attack point left, hit reload before you run out and you'll actually end up getting a stat boost for your character. As you head into battles as well, you can fire your gun to stun them on the overworld. Supposedly this gives you a stat boost as well, but I didn't really see too much of a difference while I was playing, but it did lead to a little bit of fun trying to shoot people you shouldn't. Through these battles then you can expect a whole lot of drops from cash to equipment. This equipment, it can be equipped between battles and you'll be filling one of 3 slots. The gun you carry, the kicks you are wearing, and a single gear slot. These items, they all again come with stat boosts from your defense to your attack to your HP. Actually makes for an interesting system that you'll find yourself diving into a lot, and it would be great if the performance was up to par. This is the big problem. You can carry 50 guns, 50 kicks, 50 gear items to select from, so 150 items total. The more you get though, the more overwhelming this menu becomes. You're just scrolling down a long list, no way to filter through it. Then the performance here just starts to drop, and there's a serious noticeable delay as you work your way down this list, and it just felt like it was taking absolutely forever. Once I got to an entire party of 4 and I had to go through this nightmare of an experience, I ended up using the auto equip button at the top of the screen. It's not perfect, but it's a hell of a lot less tedious. This equipment then, it can be gained in one of 3 ways. Like I said, you're going to collect it in random drops from enemies while actually leveling up at the same time. That will also give you a HP boost. You can buy it at stores, though cash will be tight initially, or you can collect it from crates scattered around the world. Basically think Borderlands, where you'll find different level chests to unlock. These, they use keys that are again gained from beating down on foes. I like it in some ways, but it can provide for some tedium. In the opening hour I got lucky and I was seriously overpowered thanks to a sniper rifle I acquired, but then later in the game, maybe the last hour or so, I had to keep on grinding out a level till I found something suitable to match the upcoming boss. Sure, I could have gone to the store, but 2 things: these screens lack any real detail detail, it's really hard to compare your current inventory to what you're buying. But then too, I gotta say the wares toward the end of the game, just not good enough. You can also actually sell weapons while I'm on the idea of store if you want to clear things up a bit, but again, it's another nightmare screen that is sluggish, and it does very little to help you translate the sort of weapon you're selling, only giving you the name. The one thing I will say I do like though is when you're farming levels or gear, each time you exit an area and then re-enter, all enemies and loot crates will respawn. This though could be seen as a negative as well, dependent on your taste. If you are thinking here though, great, I can farm low level enemies, level all the way up, think again, all enemies, all crates, they level up alongside you, meaning there's always a relatively decent challenge ahead of you. Now I want to talk about the world itself and what you can find. It's a very creative location, no question about it, but the map that's in place top left screen to navigate is weak, and it could have really done with more detail or maybe separation. That's because in parts with let's say multiple levels and staircases, it's tough at times to work out where you need to be. Likewise, the world itself I was excited to explore, but outside of the odd text box popping up, there's really not much to interact with outside of food stands to restore health, which I will say will be essential as you don't regen after fights. You get fast travel as well, like your trusty flying car that unlocks more and more with progression. And then finally, of course, save points. They can be done when you are on the overworld map or at certain locations like standing in front of a bed. Also on this note, another weird thing actually on the overworld in the city, it asks you if you want to ascend or descend stairs, but in dungeons you can freely walk up and down them. Kind of makes things a pain in the ass, honestly, as this menu just keeps on popping up on screen when you need to climb let's say 4 flights of stairs. Why can't I just move freely up and down? Also, on starting the game, you're going to be sprinting absolutely everywhere. She's near impossible to control. Here's a tip, jump into the menu, you can actually turn off auto sprint. Took me about an hour to figure this out, but it was driving me crazy. Finally then for gameplay performance, and I would say choppy at best, especially the further you get into the game. Yes, the menus lag pretty much from the beginning as I say, but in game the screen will often freeze for just a split second here and there. It's an RPG, so it doesn't really matter, but it is noticeable and will happen in nearly every battle, every enemy encounter you have. Even just navigation around the map itself, you will see it because it gets busy. You see these shadows wandering around, and those are your enemies. It gives you a chance to avoid them, but it doesn't help when the game stutters. It's also worth knowing during my time with this one, I had 2 hard crashes in the same spot towards the end game as I exited a location before getting past it. Lucky for me though, I had just saved my game. So overall with gameplay, it took me 5.5 hours to beat the main story of this one, and even though I've complained about it a lot here, I still somehow by the end ended up enjoying my time with it. It took some work from me working things out due to limited tutorials and farming here and there, but in the end it is somewhat putting its own stamp on the genre with some decent mechanics around the weapons you use and of course those attack points. I'm sure I could have extended this playtime too because there is side missions in here. There's just very little way of actually finding out where they are except for just walking around this map, and that personally wasn't for me. Little more direction and a few performance fixes, and this one actually could be decent. At the moment though, it feels kind of destined for a cult status. So graphically speaking, when you boot this up, the game will look awful. It will be blurry, it will be difficult to read text, and it will be washed over with so many different colours, you'll pretty much strain your eyes in the opening minutes just trying to focus on anything, especially location names that pop up on the map. What you want to do here, jump into the menus and turn 2 things off. Tilt shift, that blurs the edges of the screen for some unknown reason, and then also turn off chromatic aberration. That screws with the colours and focus of the image, creating almost layers, like a 3D effect. Why they would add this as an opening option, I don't know, because for me the game looks 10 times better without it, as it all just comes into focus and you'll actually realise the incredible level of detail that went into this world. Likewise, there's something here called combat focus, and this is every time an attack happens in battle, it zooms in and out on the character. Not a fan from personally, but it does work. It's just my taste. I'd rather look at the entire battlefield like a traditional RPG. The only problem graphically, honestly, is the text boxes. When your character speaks, it ends up blocking half your screen, or you can't see your enemies or what you're walking towards, and they take forever to disappear. The world though, look, gotta say stunning, and while I wish it had more to do, in it, you know, it's still great to look at. With the city setting, you'll go everywhere from the underground to laboratories to bars to coke dens. It's interesting to see this take on dungeons, and it for sure feels unique in that sense. It for sure captures that kind of futuristic style it's going for. Character models then, they're okay. The party of 4 you end up with, decent enough. They're kind of like a budget anime, but I will say anime designs by the end can be a little bit bland and repetitive. Not much really changes honestly until the last couple of hours or so, where it goes from like 0 to 100. Overall visuals I was impressed, but just make sure to mess with those options if you are going to jump in. So audio then, it's a mixed bag. The attacks, some sound good, some sound really awful. The environments, the city has ambient sound everywhere, but dungeons, pretty much nothing at all. It's the music that I find the most interesting though. There's the occasional like decent track here and there, but everything's the same. It's basically 4 bars that loop over and over again. So even if you did like the track, by the end, you're gonna hate it. I can pretty much promise you that. It's for sure going for that 90s hip hop vibe. It's advertising, but yeah, just expect like cheap copycat versions of Dre and so on. And for me, that's where it lacks personality. It's uninspired and it's just trying to copy the greats. A tough thing to do, and it's instantly noticeable. I also noticed a performance issue in audio where the music would just completely disappear and I was left with silence. It happened in maybe 3 or 4 of the dungeons. Overall audio is lacking as it promises its 90s influences, but instead just sounds like a very poor version of just that. So overall this is a weird one. I've mentioned more than a fair few problems, yet I still enjoyed it. The characters grew on me, the combat was actually interesting, loved the bullet management, and the world, at least at a visual level, felt different. Hell, even the B-movie story, grammatical issues and all, and the terrible use of swearing. The cast of characters, they just like, it all kind of grew on me somehow. I'm also a B-movie kind of guy though, honestly, and I want to put that out there because I can find the fun in the bad, and that's very much the best audience for this. That's not to put the game down either, it's just all almost very like cheesy. The problems though aren't small. It chugs in performance, the tutorial is lacking, the options you need to experiment with to get the visuals just right take not only a bit of time but make absolutely no sense. The world then is also lacking in things to do, and that map, it's basically a beginner's guide to how not to design maps. Then the menus, that sort of work, but they have to think about nearly everything you do for like a split second. That said, I was laughing, I was having fun, and yeah, I do not regret the 5.5–6 hours I've put into it. So here comes the score with a stipulation. If you want something different and you want to experience what may be the next cult RPG experience, problems and all, check this out. But I would say check your brain cells at the door too, because the game itself has very few of them. Today I'm going to be giving Orangeblood an average 5 out of 10. I don't want to call it below average weirdly, because I still had fun and sometimes that can, you know, overcome issues, and that's kind of what this is. I will say though, I expect scores to be all over the place with this one because it's going to be so individual dependent. With that then, like a shout out to the patrons of the channel who are just going above and beyond to support SwitchCorner. Helps more than you know, so thank you all so much. If you do want to check that out for yourself, it is linked in the description down below. Then hit subscribe if you love the Switch as much as we all do here. Join our growing family, and I'll see you all on the next video. Thanks everyone.